Welcome to this episode of the Crypto Fatcat and the Crypto Skeptic. I am Sean Fitzgerald, the Crypto Skeptic, and I'm here with my partner in crime, Jonathan Levy, the Crypto Fatcat. So here we are, Jonathan, entering the crypto winter. Crypto has dropped markedly from its all-time highs and even from its, whatever you call it, support point. It was around sort of 30 to 40 grand for quite a while there, but we've crashed through that. Are we in the early stages of this crypto winter? Are we headed towards much deeper freezes? What do we got to look forward to?
Wow. It's impossible to actually predict the future, but there are some things to be aware of and that might point us in some direction. So the cyclical nature of Bitcoin is essentially that every 4 years, Bitcoin halves itself in terms of its emissions. So there's less Bitcoin that gets created every day, essentially. And so the last time they did this was May 2020. And about 6 months later, Bitcoin hit its all-time high. It blew through its old all-time high and made a new all-time high about 6 months later. And then a year after that, it hit its all-time high of $69,000, November 2021. Right about now, and every time Bitcoin's been in its 4-year cycle in its history, and this is now, I think, the third or fourth time it's done this, it starts crashing super, super hard. And it's really shocking. And so it's gone from $1,200 down to $200, which was really upsetting to a lot of people, not surprisingly. It went from $20,000 down to $3,000. Currently, we're doing $69,000. We're down to right now around 20, but we dropped as low as, I think, very high 17s, like 17.9, maybe within the last few days even, which is really shockingly low, I have to say. If we are actually just in this cycle and there aren't things that can be done about it, which I think there might be, but we'll get to that. Then we actually would have a long way to go before we'd start to drag out of this based on historically, right? It would be another, the next halving isn't until like April 2024. And that would mean if everything just followed along the normal historical path, we'd be seeing like a new real big jump like 2.5 years from now in terms of the Bitcoin price. Now, we might see good stuff along the way, but generally, it wouldn't be really till the halving before you start to see that. So that's if everything just follows the past. Will it? I'm not convinced it will, but of course, there are also a lot of other things going on, which has contributed to this insane fallout for Bitcoin, right? So there's 3 big things going on with it. One is there was a big thing, I don't know if we talked about this actually on the show, Sean, but like maybe a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, Terra Luna, which was one of the Bitcoin, not Bitcoin, but a very popular crypto, top 10 crypto, that in its stable coin, UST lost its peg to the dollar. And as someone who owned a bunch of UST, I feel the pain. I think it's currently worth like a penny instead of $1 each. It's really bad. And Terra went from being worth $90 per to being worth like 0.0000001 cents or something like that. Something crazy like that. Like it was billions of dollars, like $50 billion was essentially wiped away. So that was the first event, which began sort of this massive downturn. Of course, there are macro events happening in the world, which matter too. The war in Ukraine, supply chain issues, inflation. We're seeing not just crypto go through a winter. We're actually seeing assets in general go through a winter. Like look at the stock market, look at the NASDAQ, look at tech stocks. Everything is down 50%, 40%, 60%. So crypto is part of that. Crypto is more extreme. Crypto is always more extreme in both directions, really. And so we're seeing that too. Then the third thing that happened, which has been this last push, because I thought we weren't going to crash through about 22.4, which is the 200-week moving average for Bitcoin, which historically, it had never really burst through that line of support in its history. It did last week, significantly so. It dropped all the way down to a little under 18,000, which is a lot less than 22.4. And it's because one of the biggest crypto venture firms in the world, Three Arrows Capital, had leveraged themselves to the hilt. And as things started to fall because of these other 2 major issues going on, these other 2 factors, they started getting liquidated and they didn't have the money to pay it. And they're nearly insolvent right now. They were worth something like $20 billion, $30 billion. I think they're currently worth like $1 billion or 1.5. They have a lot of debt. There's a lot of uncertainty around it, a lot of fear about like how that's going to continue to affect the prices of things and crypto in general. So that was this last push. So hopefully that's the end of all of this horribleness. It's not clear that it is. There may be other dominoes to fall. So that's the scary stuff. The good stuff is this. there are two potentially major events happening in the relatively near future that could be extremely good for the crypto price beyond like the macro world picture changing, which is possible. Like they're trying to get a hold on inflation now, much more so than they were before. That will help, of course. If the war in Ukraine ever ends, that'll probably be a good thing, stuff like that. But beyond that, the Ethereum merge is supposed to happen now. They're saying it's probably going to be in September. The Ethereum developers are saying that. The merge is where they change from proof of work to proof of stake, which is going to change Ethereum liquidity tremendously. The supply is going to dry up very quickly. I can get into the mechanics of that if that's useful. I don't know if it is. But Ethereum is the second biggest crypto in the world by market cap, but significantly so by market cap. And if Ethereum's price starts going up, that should drag a lot of the rest of crypto along with it, I would think, most of the time. So that is one very strong positive event that's coming relatively soon. The other thing, which is not scheduled, but is likely to happen in the relatively near future, is a spot Bitcoin ETF in the United States. Right now, they only have futures ETFs, which means you don't actually have to buy Bitcoin and back it with anything. But a spot Bitcoin ETF forces the fund to actually buy Bitcoin anytime someone buys into the ETF, which would be huge. And when Canada did this for real, and it was the biggest. They had the biggest, I think, 24 hours in the history of any ETF when they did a spot Bitcoin ETF. So we assume billions upon billions upon billions of dollars would just, even in this current environment, would go into Bitcoin. These are people who've been waiting to buy Bitcoin and not really had an avenue to do so in ways that made sense to them. They can now do it once the spot Bitcoin ETF comes out. So that the SEC has been really reluctant to approve that. But Grayscale, which is one of the biggest holders and institutional holders in the world, has been pushing very hard for this, and it's just retained one of the best lawyers in the United States, the kind of guy who kind of never loses these things, and is sort of a sign that they're going to the next level with this. So it's possible the SEC is not going to ultimately get litigious or fight back that way and will back down. Either way, I expect we're going to see a spot ETF in the next year and possibly much, much sooner. And if that happens, that should really goose the Bitcoin price because the supply will start to dry up there too, as a lot of it will have to get bought up. That's a very long answer to say, I don't know how much longer we're in this crypto winter. It could be a long ass time. It could be incredibly bloody and slow. And it might be 2.5 years before we really crawl out of it. But maybe we'll get lucky and it won't be.
But so it sounds like you're looking forward, like you as a crypto fat cat, it's like, I'm not hearing you sound like you're in a lot of pain or this is really difficult for you or that you're really bummed out by what's happening.
I mean, I really wish it wasn't happening, to be clear. Like I was worth a significant amount more money than I am now, like by multiples, even 6 months ago, 7 months ago to now, like literally I would guess like a 3x or something like that. So to be clear, so I'm like a third of my net worth from what I was. But I am not in this game for the short term. So to me, the only questions I ask myself as these prices are falling beyond numbers that I thought were really possible, like I did not expect us ever to drop below 20,000 again with Bitcoin. I thought there would always be support at that price level. And that just the institutions wouldn't allow that and rich people wouldn't allow that. But that clearly has not been the case. It did drop below. But the fundamentals of Bitcoin and Ethereum have not changed at all. And there's been no bad news around either of those things. Just the prices are dropping because of these other things that are going on that are sort of incidental to what's going on with these two particular assets. So to me, that's fine. If the price of Bitcoin was dropping because someone had successfully counterfeited Bitcoin, that would be a completely different story. And I would assume Bitcoin was dead. If Ethereum had really bad things happening with it and the price was happening, that'd be one thing. That's not what's happening. It's just the context around it that's sort of pulling. It's this massive weight around them that's pulling them down. Eventually, I expect them to break free. It may take a while, but I'm not worried about that.
Well, help me understand that because it seems like the markets are crashing. Stock markets are coming down significantly because interest rates are going up significantly and inflation is so high that looking forward, the market sees, well, the interest rates are likely to stay up and there's likely to be a recession where earnings go down. So lower earnings and more competition for money, more expensive to borrow money. So the markets are reacting accordingly. But the narrative around Bitcoin was that it's a store of value, and let's say inflation would be, you would think, a good thing for something that's a store of
Yeah.
value, like gold goes up during inflationary periods.
No, it doesn't. But it has not for the last 10 years. But that's the narrative, but it's not true. Look at the price. But please continue. Your point is still true about store of value, of course.
Okay, so the narrative. So I'd have to look at those gold prices, but the narrative is the belief that people had around Bitcoin was that the fiat currency is very inflationary. They're just printing it like it's going out of style.
Yeah.
Bitcoin, that's never going to happen with, and therefore, as inflation goes up, the value of Bitcoin is going to go up, and people are going to see it's more valuable, and that will also sort of play into itself. So why is that not happening, and is that not a concern for you that narrative has been shaken?
I don't see it as a concern. I don't think the narrative has been shaken. I think the idea that Bitcoin is a store of value right now is a foolish narrative, and incorrect. Not foolish is the wrong word. Incorrect narrative. I think it's seen as it will become a store of value. It's a place where you could put your money, and it's probably safer as long as you've got a low time preference, like I have. Like, I feel very comfortable with my money in Bitcoin as long as I'm not planning on, needing it anytime soon, because it's super volatile. Like, that's part of the game right now with it. Anyway, it hasn't yet established itself fully in the world, so it's still figuring itself out. It can't really be a store of value until it actually loses most of its big upside. Once it hits what it's really worth down the road, then it'll be a store of value. I don't believe it's close to that number. I think it's miles from that number personally. But you're right. To see it as a store of value right now is not really reasonable. And it's talked about as gold 2.0. I think it ultimately will be that, and maybe a lot more than that. But it certainly isn't that yet. I mean, gold is weird because gold really hasn't moved in 10 years, which mostly has been really problematic for gold. It's doing like a lot worse against most assets. But lately it hasn't moved also, and that's a lot better for gold than everybody else. But is that actually good? Bitcoin's not a fair thing to compare it to, because Bitcoin 10 years ago was worth so much less. But if you look at the NASDAQ or something too, the NASDAQ, even being down a huge amount in the last 6 months, still, I think, is crushing gold. I think real estate is crushing gold comparatively. And so is gold even a great store of value? I don't know that it is. It's okay. It's got a great history. I think, I don't know, we're always looking for something like that, right? And these are all very inexact sciences, where we say gold's a store of value. What we mean is it more or less is going to hold its own against the dollar, as the dollar inflates. And is that true? I think in the past it was, and I think it hasn't been true for a long time now, for many, many, many years. And we haven't found a perfect store of value. And I don't know if we ever will. I think Bitcoin will act reasonably well as that and beat inflation most years. It is strange to me that all assets are dropping at these very high inflationary points, but I sort of understand the psychology of it too, which is everything costs more money, so I need money. So people start selling some of their assets to get money, and then that drives the price of the assets down. Then people panic, get emotional, sell more because they don't want to be holding the bag. And here we are. I think that's a lot of what ends up happening. And of course, billionaires love this. Billionaires come in and buy everything cheap. It'd be nice to be a billionaire right about now. I'd love to be a billionaire right about now.
So entering this crypto winter, it seems like it's happened quite suddenly, but you are warming yourself by the fire of your belief in that crypto spring and summer that you're seeing down the road, whether that is in 6 months' time or 2.5 years' time. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, it really is. I think the world needs Bitcoin or something just like Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is there and has the network effect and the brand that nothing else has. So I don't see how anything else is going to do that instead of Bitcoin. I don't see what would replace it. The world needs an honest monetary instrument that is transparent, open source, non-counterfeitable, and with a completely predictable supply. And without that, you end up having lots of really difficult, ultimately unmanageable financial situations in government. I mean, that's what always happens in the end. And Bitcoin was created in the 2008 global financial crisis, or as a result of that, because of the concern around sort of how governments were handling their fiat. And so here we are, we're in another one of these. Well, I mean, it's when things are down, it's really easy to dunk on crypto. I understand that. And it's not unfair. It's not unfair to do so. But, when things are like, just call it a store of value when it's, up like 4x in a year, which it did, whatever in 2021, I would say. Maybe not 4x, maybe it was 3x, 3.5x in 2021. But whatever it was, like that's clearly way more than whatever inflation would be, right? So if we're calling it a store of value, then I don't think it's unfair to call it, well, it's still some version of a store of value now, but it's still inchoate. It's still figuring itself out. Before it's a true store of value, we're probably 10 years from it being a complete true store of value. But I feel very comfortable parking value there, because I think, again, as someone who doesn't need that money anytime soon, I can wait it out. And I believe it will have great value in the future, probably a lot more than it does now.
So you don't want to put that money into the Chinese yuan and bet on that in 10 years time?
I mean, I'm sure some people are doing that, and maybe very, very profitably. That is, that's outside my pay grade, man. I don't know how to, I don't want to do it. I feel like Bitcoin's understandable to me more in a way that most of this other stuff like that, Forex is not. And I don't deign to try it. I'm excited just to understand, like, being able to talk comfortably about crypto I'm pretty excited about just being able to do that.
Cool.
I can do that.
All right, we'll leave it there for episode 1 of the crypto winter. And I'm really curious where
Nice.
we're going to be in another couple of weeks or in another month's time.
I mean, we may have to rename this podcast, right? It's like the Crypto Skeptic and the Crypto just Cat, or like Skinny Cat or something, man.
Right. We can change the name of the cat as we go through the different crypto price levels.
I like it. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
All right. That's all for now.